Now that's what I like about vinyl. You know, when you buy a record, you actually hold something in your hand, which is nice to look at. Look at this is awesome. 14 September 1965, the Bijenkorf of Amsterdam. Anyway, today we're gonna take a look at 7 reasons why the Rolling Stones kick ass. Now it's always been a question like, who were the best, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones? And while it's true that the Beatles wrote the first hit single for the Rolling Stones, a song called I Wanna Be Your Man, the Beatles version really is inferior to the Stones version. And that's because of the Rolling Stones' secret weapon, Brian Jones's slide guitar. That's what's great about the music of the Rolling Stones, I personally think, is it has its roots deeply embedded in the blues. And especially on a few of those early recordings, you can find great examples of the slide guitar played by Brian Jones. Now, if you don't know who Brian Jones was the founding member of the Rolling Stones, and he used to play rhythm guitar and all sorts of exotic instruments. And he learned to play the slide guitar by listening to Elmore James. And Elmore James was a great American blues singer, famous for playing with a bottleneck, it's called, the slide guitar.
Shake your money maker, shake your money maker, shake your money maker, and then...
Another great example is Little Red Rooster, again played by Brian Jones. If you want to play this song at home, you need to tune your guitar in what's called the open G tuning. It's very simple. The A string goes down 1 whole step to a G. And the E string also goes down 1 whole step to a D. And now you're all set to play one of the best blues songs the Stones ever recorded.
If you see my little red rooster, please drive him home.
Now what's interesting is that Keith Richards would later on use the same tuning to write many of the Rolling Stones' most well-known riffs. You know, many of the Stones songs were written with the open G tuning. And the great thing is, if you just press down your index finger, starting on the A string, you already get a very full and rich sounding chord. You're not doing anything at all at this point. Look, I could play guitar. And the other thing he does is he uses his ring finger, for example on the 7th fret, D string, and middle finger, 6th fret on the B string. You get another very rich sounding chord. And he just plays those 2 chords all over the fretboard. And that's how many of the Stones' greatest songs and riffs were written. So it's basically just those 2 chords all over the fretboard. And it doesn't really matter where you play it, it almost always sounds good. And that's how Keith Richards wrote like dozens of songs. Now in 1969, Brian Jones left the group. And he was followed by Mick Taylor, a very accomplished guitarist. And Mick Taylor's work with the Stones, especially on the album Get Your Yayas Out, is simply outstanding. You know, in a recent video I talk about 6 solo guitar tips. I talk about the different things a good solo should have. And this solo by Mick Taylor for Sympathy for the Devil has all that stuff in spades. You know, a good vibrato, playing 2 notes at the same time. That's a great riff, by the way, to know. Let's say you're improvising a solo, a minor blues pentatonic scale, and throw it in there. That's a good one. Then he continues on with repetition. And also very good use of both the minor and the major pentatonic scale, combining them both together. That's major. That's, by the way, a good lick. And then he goes back to minor, which sounds different. Great stuff, Mick Taylor, fantastic guitarist. Now, many people consider the lineup with Mick Taylor to be the best lineup the Stones has ever had, but I personally prefer the original lineup with Brian Jones. Now, Brian Jones wasn't the virtuoso guitar player that Mick Taylor was, but he could play any instrument. And he would often play a counter melody straight through the vocals, which is quite unique. So Mick and Keith would write a song like this. Simple chords with a melody. Under my thumb, there's a girl who once pushed me around. And typically, normally, that would be fine. We've got the chords, we've got the melody. Well, what else would you want to do? Well, in comes Brian Jones, and he plays something like... Under my thumb, there's a girl who once pushed me around. It's down on me. That's a pretty dominant melody to play through the vocals. It's called the counter melody. Other examples are songs like Out of Time, that's a good one, or Lady Jane, for instance. There are also many examples of the influence of country music in many of the Stones' repertoire. Songs like Wild Horses and Dead Flowers come to mind. But also a song like Sitting on a Fence. This is what Keith Richards is playing in the intro. It's pretty bluegrass kind of stuff. And then in comes, of course, Brian Jones with his counter melody, this time really going overboard. He just plays the same melody all throughout the entire song, regardless of the verse, chorus, or what the vocals are doing. That's almost a classical melody. Then put the two together and we have... Now, the other great influence on the music of the Stones, of course, like I said before, has to be the blues.
And then you just sit on it, you know, and you can say what the hell you like, you know, you can get out of here, baby.
Take, for example, like an obscure blues song that Mick and Keith wrote in the early 60s called Good Times, Bad Times. It's a great blues song. I'm gonna try to sing it for you. I'm not much of a singer, so bear with me, but it sounds something like this. There've been good times, there've been bad times. I had my share of hard times too. But I've lost my faith in the world, honey, when I lost you. Great classic blues song, great fun to play. You know, when you listen to Keith Richards, it doesn't sound that complicated, but that is until you pick up a guitar and you try to do it yourself, and you'll soon find out it's pretty hard to recreate that exact feel. So, pretty awesome guitar player, Keith Richards. Now, the image of the Rolling Stones is to be the greatest rock band on the planet. And when you think of Mick Jagger, you think of sex, drugs, and rock and roll and what have you. But Mick Jagger was also the guy who wrote this melody. if I didn't tell you it was Mick Jagger who wrote that melody, and I would play something like this. You would probably think it was Mozart. But it was not. It was Mick Jagger, and that tells you something, that Mick and Keith really were extraordinary songwriters. And in my opinion, that's the best thing about the Rolling Stones. They wrote and created some fantastic songs, fantastic music. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for subscribing, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.